This is Beau Dragone, and I am joined by Bobby from Jomboy Media for an interview. Bobby, how's it going?
What's going on, Bo? How you doing, man? Glad to jump on. I know you're telling me this is one of your first interviews, so I'm honored to be the first.
Thank you. I'm so excited that you're here. It's great talking to you, listening to you. I'm just so excited.
It's a good time too, after two Giants wins, where it's like two wins in a row for the Giants is so rare to come by the last few
I know.
years.
In the bye week, you got a perfect ending spot for that.
It's like just 2 weeks to
So,
talk trash to everyone.
exactly, especially Cowboys fans. First of all, so how did you get into podcasting?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, the basic story. Me and a friend started a show called Silman Radio. Uh, we were literally just talking about sports, and it was kind of like, everybody starts a podcast and like, oh, we do sports, but we do a little extra too, kind of thing. Now
Yeah,
I grinded like crazy to get interviews, so like we interviewed a bunch of NFL players, past and current, and then I realized like, hey, doing national starting from nothing is just not going to work. And then myself and Danny King started the Giants Nation podcast at the time. And then we ended up, long story short, ended up linking up with Jomboy after making a connection with him and Jake maybe like 6 months before. And then honestly, we turned it into Talkin Giants, and it was all right, but it really blew up when the Giants drafted Daniel Jones. And I just realized like no one's really like breaking down like who Daniel Jones is. We're just kind of, it's just like, oh, we're mad. And I'm like, well, let me go like find out who he is as a player. And that is really what gave us the bump and made us realize like, okay, this is what we got to do to be successful.
good to hear. Yeah, I totally agree with you. When Daniel Jones was drafted, everybody hated that decision. Not gonna lie, I mean, I didn't know what to expect of it either. So you could have gotten him later in the draft, all that stuff that Dave Gettleman was talking about, and it turned out to be good. Like as you said, you started analyzing that and uh, and breaking it down, which is really what boomed you guys.
Yeah,
So
yeah. The film breakdowns is really like that. I wasn't even doing like voiceovers or anything. It was just like clipping, like, hey, look at this throw. And honestly, the one thing that I think a lot of people realized when I started showing stuff is how crazy the drops were at Duke. Like it was. I'm not a Duke fan. Well, actually, I'm an honorary member of Duke gang because of the Daniel Jones stuff. But I was mad at their receivers. Like, how do you guys consistently drop 50-yard passes over and over again, and then started bringing it all into context? So, yeah, that
yeah,
was like what like people are like, okay, he's not just doing raw kind of stuff.
exactly. It wasn't all his fault at Duke. I mean, his receivers, like you just said, they were horrible, and it was an underrated draft pick for sure. Um, so do you have a current favorite Giants player? And where did your love from the Giants come from?
I mean, basically, I'm living down in Florida, but I was born in Jersey. We moved down here when I was a couple of years old, but I was like, okay, I'm from New Jersey. I like the New Jersey team. So I like the Nets, the Devils, the Giants, and then the Yankees were the one family like team. My dad's not in the sports, but my dad was a Yankee fan. So Yankees was the one I was
Okay.
born into. So just picked them when I started watching sports and, in elementary school, and then got really into it. Um, and my Eli, I was a fan during the Kerry Collins years, but when Eli was drafted is when I really, really got into it. Like the
There you
first game
go.
I ever
There you
watched
go.
was the Super Bowl loss to the Ravens.
Oh wow.
I was like 7, 8 years old at the time.
Hmm.
But as far as like now favorite player, it's I don't really have a favorite, like this is my favorite player. Like, like
Hmm.
once Eli retired, it's like, all right, I'm 28 years old. It's like I don't need to do the posters of the players on my wall anymore. Uh,
Yeah.
but if there's a player I love watching and I'm like a huge fan of, I would probably go Jabril Peppers. I think Peppers, like, he just does that. He plays the type of football, fast, loose, and aggressive, and that's what I love, especially on defense. So I would go Jabril Peppers.
I agree with you there. I mean, it's also off the field. It's not only on field, but his off field, his clubhouse manners, the way he hypes up the team is just something that you don't get to see a lot. And from Jabril, that's all you see from him. So it
Yeah,
really is impressive.
I don't know if you saw the clip, but I found this clip when we beat Washington, where a wide receiver blindsided him and lit him up, like just lit
Hmm.
him up, and he
Yeah.
gets up and he
Like
claps
nice
and
job.
like pats him on the head, like good hit, and he
Yeah.
totally disarms the wide receiver. It was pretty funny.
That's just the sportsmanship you want to see nowadays, with everything going on, especially when we had, Odell Beckham Jr. and, that whole thing with Josh Norman. Like, that's the kind of giant you want to see. You want him to be representing your team.
Yeah, and I
So,
like I love trash talk, but and then that's part of the reason why I like Peppers. But he's just I like the way people play. Like I like people who play nasty and aggressive, and that's what Peppers does. And that's like on the offense, I like Nick Gates. I feel like Nick Gates one is smart, but he's always pancaking people, trying to make a hit, helping people out. So I go offense Nick Gates and then defense Peppers.
awesome, awesome. So what do you see as the biggest difference from this year's team versus last year's team?
The defense, and that's there's different levels to that. One, Blake Martinez is the biggest upgrade this team had over
Okay,
Alec
yeah,
Ogletree. James Bradbury is the best player, but I would say the gap between Martinez and Ogletree and Jenkins and Bradbury is higher. But the addition of those two guys has been huge. And then Patrick Graham. I mean, I'm a scheme guy. I love like seeing like breaking stuff down and seeing what they're doing. And Graham does different stuff every week. He's going to throw new wrinkles at you every week, especially on third down. You always see something cool every week. So I really do think Patrick Graham is the biggest difference. I think Judge has been a good head coach, but it's hard to when a coach isn't a coordinator, like the last couple we've had with Shermer and McAdoo. It's hard to
yeah.
really point at something substantial. Now it seems like he's coaching this team up and teaching them, and that's all good. But if there's anything I could just point to, it's Patrick Graham. And honestly, is the biggest difference with those two additions.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one too, because I mean, there was that play against the Washington football team where Jabril and Logan Ryan had the two game-ending interceptions, and Patrick Graham came up with that play like the morning before, Saturday morning, and
Yeah,
it won us a game. So that's the kind of coaching staff that you want to see on your team.
yeah. Whereas like in past years, where it's like they just kind of running basics. Like people like James Bettcher, and I couldn't stand him because everyone just kept on telling me, "Oh, well, his system is too complicated to run right now." It's like, well, then what did we bring him here for? Why did we bring him to a young team if his system is too complicated? Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I know Patrick Graham has some more vets on the team, but like there's a lot of new guys to this team without a preseason, without a real training camp, and they seem to be implementing some pretty complex stuff. But something Graham says what he does is where he's multiple is he'll take a coverage and he just runs it different ways. We're like, okay, you're going to take the responsibility of the safety on this play, cornerback. And I mean, I'm getting nerdy right now, but it's just you don't. I think people overcomplicate it a lot of times, and I think Patrick Graham and the coaching staff keeps it simple for them.
Yeah, he's definitely was bringing that defense to a whole new level and making them the best that they can play.
Right.
It's not just what plays they do, but it's how they perform in those plays and how they execute the plays. And they're really showing that. Patrick Graham is a leader of that defense. He knows how to win games. And I know we only won 3 games, but it's the defense that's helping us win those games. They're keeping us in the games and they're helping us win those games.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what do you think the Giants have to do in order to win the NFC East?
Well, one, they got to hope the Eagles keep on losing, which, I mean, it looks like they might, So hopefully Washington or Dallas could take one away from them. And then I know it sounds cliche, but beat the teams that are beatable. Like you got to win those. Like the Bengals is one, and then the
Bengals,
Cowboys
yeah.
are one. Those are the two out of the 6 that are left. And I think outside of that, we have the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the Ravens, and the Browns. So
Yeah,
the Browns
yep.
are beatable, so you have to win that game, and then sneak one out against one of those other 3 teams. Whether it's the Cardinals, I know the Cardinals are the hot commodity right now, but I don't think they're unbeatable. The Seahawks seem to be vulnerable with their defense, and then the
Yeah.
Ravens look vulnerable too. So I'm not saying you got to like go beat every one of those teams, but beat the teams that you should. The Browns are probably a better team, but it's a winnable game where you don't feel outmatched,
Mhm.
and then steal one from the other 3.
Yeah, just like we shut down Chase Young and Montez Sweat, we got to shut down, Myles Garrett in that Browns game. And like you said, we have to rely that we can win those games with the Browns, the Cowboys, and the Bengals. And like you said, I mean, Seahawks might be the best chance. Seahawks or Ravens. I mean, I don't know about the Cardinals, but
I'm
so far,
excited to see what we were talking about. Graham does against QBs like Lamar Jackson, who's having some issues, but he's extremely mobile. Kyler Murray's having a great year, but Kyler
Mhm.
Murray's not like perfect yet. He's still a young QB, and there's
Definitely.
ways you could take advantage of him. Um, and if I'm really interested to see how Graham is able to scheme that. And I keep forgetting that we're on a bye week right now. On the other end of that, you might get O'Shea and Zimenez back, who no world beater, but he's probably your best just pure pass rusher, which this team
I
needs.
agree. Yeah.
McKinney, I'm not going to put high expectations on McKinney until we see him, but nonetheless, he's a weapon. Ryan Lewis, who you're like, oh, who? Well, he's probably their best cornerback too, so you live with that. And then Tay Crowder, who's their best inside linebacker next to Blake Martinez.
You're so right. And yeah, there's so much more that defense could be with those players who just aren't playing right now. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what Xavier McKinney has to show us. I mean, we drafted. I want to see this guy. You know.
Yeah, I don't even, and he's a player where it's like you draft a wide receiver, you know what he's going to come in and do. I have no clue what Xavier McKinney is going to be. I don't know if they'll play him as just a regular free safety. I don't know if they'll play him as strong safety or a rover, or nickel corner. Like I have just no clue what we're going to like. People ask me like, what do you expect from him? And I don't expect anything. I just expect him to come out there and be used in a versatile way, which that's another word that gets overused. And then when Patrick Graham was hired, everyone like, oh, he's multiple, he's versatile. And I was like, blah, blah, blah. I'll believe it when I see it. Because everyone says that. But he truly is multiple. So I'm excited to see what he does with McKinney.
Exactly. That's where Patrick Graham comes in and ties together this whole defense and allows us to win games and keep us in games. He has to put him in the scheme. He has to make sure things happen, execute plays. And Xavier McKinney will definitely be a part of that when he comes back.
For sure.
So in the offseason, is the Saquon trade possible or any other big trades you see happening?
I don't think a Saquon trade would happen. Kevin Zeitler could be gone. And I love Kevin Zeitler, but the more I've been thinking, we're doing an episode on the bye week when we're talking a little bit about free agency, and the more I think about it, it's like, much as I love Kevin, he might have to either take a restructure and take a lower deal or be traded. And with Shane Lemieux looking good enough to play, he might be a guy you move on from. But I think Evan Ingram, because it's been just so up and down. And I think in the offseason is when his value will be his highest. Like his value, I know there was offers at the trade deadline. I just feel like in season, like he's a different type of player where you have to work into your scheme. You can't just plug him in to try all right, block, run post routes, run drag routes. Like you got to scheme him in there. And his stock was all time low after that Eagles game where he had the first Eagles game where he had the drops.
Yeah.
So I think in the offseason, he's definitely a guy that a team would convince himself like, oh, we can get the best out of him. And I don't blame the team for doing that. I view it like this. Olivier Vernon, could we have got anything for him in season? Maybe a 6th, 7th round pick. But in the offseason, they turned in the Kevin Zeitler. So that's my hope for Evan Ingram. Although he has been – actually, no, I'm not even going to say he's been better the past couple weeks. He had 2 drops versus Washington. He was good against this 1 week.
You're right. He had a touchdown, but like the next drive, he had a drop first down, which could have won us the game much easier than it did.
Yeah,
but
and then one that almost turned into an interception too.
Or
every time the ball hits your hand, something just you can't just drop it regular. It turns into an
throw it down, bat it down.
There's been like 2 or 3 that have turned into interceptions. The last one versus the Eagles. It's like every time you don't just drop the ball, it just becomes like it's horrid every time you drop it.
I agree. So this is the last question, but it might not be the simplest. Who do we draft?
All right. So right now we're at the 8th spot. So a lot of people have wanted Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle out of Oregon. I feel like we can give Matt Parrott a shot to start a tackle, and Andrew Thomas will start a tackle. I would look at a wide receiver. Obviously you don't reach Jamar Chase, the dude out of LSU. I really like him. I think he changes what an offense can do. Now they may go out in free agency and get a wide receiver. I don't know what they're going to do, but I think Jamar Chase would be an awesome pick. And then outside of that, I honestly haven't went and watched a ton of the guys out there. So right now, I would say Jamar Chase out of LSU.
Yeah, the obvious answer there was Penei Sewell, just because of the O-line in general. But you start drafting so many players, offensive players, first round for the last couple of years, and you don't really see a big change. I mean, Saquon can't turn around a team. Andrew Thomas, he's been good, but the first couple of games, it was questionable. But I agree with you. You have to draft an offensive weapon instead of
like I said, this is part of me not knowing who's out there, and I just my thing is like I'd rather say I don't know than just say Gregory Rousseau is going to be a great pass, because I might actually go watch him and him not be wow. But if there's like a legit pass rush out there, then I would go that, because that's what this defense is missing. If you get a legit pass rusher to this defense, I feel like it becomes a top 5 D in the NFL. That's what they're missing right now is that when they rush forward, they just can't get there consistently quickly. Like Leonard Williams, Dex, Dalvin, like they do a good job as defensive tackles, but they're not going to be winning those battles play in, play out, getting to the QB, forcing the QB to get the ball out quick. So a legit pass rusher would put this defense on a whole nother level to me.
I agree with you because they're pressuring the quarterback, but they only had 3 sacks versus that Eagles team last week. And, I think we can do better than 3 sacks, and a pass rusher is obviously going to help that. But,
Right, and it depends on when do the sacks it's just basically it's been simple, but can you drop everyone back in coverage and then trust that you're going to get to the QB? And Graham hasn't been able to do that. Like now, I love it. Graham will blitz corners and safeties and linebackers and line up inside linebackers outside and outside line. Like he does stuff to get pressure, but having the ability to just hey, go get the QB with one player, it changes the way you coach.
I agree with you. Well, thank you for letting me interview you, and this has been an honor. I mean, it's great talking to you.
I appreciate it, man. Let me know anytime.
Thank you so much. So this has been Beau Dragone from Radio Hofstra University, 88.7 FM. Thank you guys for tuning in.